All right, tensions escalate in the Middle East as Israel and Iran fire a new wave of missile attacks. Israel hitting Iran's state-run news agency during a live broadcast. We'll take you live to Israel for the latest. Back in the U.S., the Trump administration directing an immigration crackdown on cities the president calls the core of the Democrat power center, while he pulls back on raids targeting big businesses. Our own Nancy Liu is live in Los Angeles with the latest. Plus, the Minnesota man accused of assassinating a state lawmaker and injuring another appeared in court just hours ago. Following his capture, we'll talk with Tim Burchett, Republican congressman from Tennessee, who is demanding increased security for lawmakers. And is it a 51st state of mind? President Trump attending the G7 summit in the Canadian Rockies, smoothing things over with his fellow leaders of the world's largest economies? Think again.
They threw Russia out, which I claimed was a very big mistake. Even though I wasn't in politics then, I was very loud about it. It was a mistake in that you spend so much time talking about Russia, and he's no longer at the table. So it makes life more complicated.
I'm Chris Stirewalt filling in for Blake Berman, and you're watching The Hill on NewsNation. We begin tonight with Kelly Meyer, who is live at the White House with the latest on the president's meeting with world leaders, where the Israel-Iran conflict was at the top of the agenda. Kelly?
Hey there, Chris. Good to see you. Well, certainly Israel-Iran front of mind at this meeting of the G7 leaders. President Trump today talking the conflict in the Middle East, the war in Ukraine, and trade. Just moments ago, finalizing a trade deal with the United Kingdom on cars, beef, steel, and more. Take a listen.
It's a fair deal for both. It's going to produce a lot of jobs, a lot of income, and we have many other ones coming.
Several leaders lining up for the FaceTime with the president to hash out trade talks. He met with European Commission President at her request. That 90-day pause on Trump's tariffs, that lifts in just a few weeks, Chris. And President Trump also thinks he can make another deal, one with Iran on a new nuclear agreement. Take a listen to this.
I think Iran basically is at the negotiating table. They want to make a deal. And as soon as I leave here, we're going to be doing something.
So tease to something there. We'll have to see what comes next. And moments ago, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth announced that over the weekend, he deployed additional capabilities to the Middle East. He says they are there to enhance our, quote, defensive posture in the region. Chris?
Kelly Meyer, thank you as always. Okay, NewsNation correspondent Robert Sherman is live in Tel Aviv, where it's just after 1 a.m. and anxious residents are watching the skies. Robert, what's the latest tonight from Israel?
Yeah, Chris, Israelis are just now emerging from the bomb shelters once again after sirens blared here in Tel Aviv just a few moments ago. This coming as President Trump has been pushing for Iran to come back to the negotiating table, believing that they can't beat a one-on-one fight. It can't win a one-on-one fight with Israel in the coming days and weeks. But Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu emphasizing that as long as their two main objectives remain uncompleted in the war, they will continue to push forward. Take a listen.
The Israeli Air Force controls the skies of Tehran. This is a change to the entire campaign. We are on the way to achieving our two goals: elimination of the nuclear threat and elimination of the missile threat. We say to the citizens of Tehran, evacuate, and we act.
And the Israelis making good on their promise to target Tehran this evening. That includes destroying a pair of F-14s that were parked on the tarmac in Tehran. We also saw the Israelis confirming today that they ended up hitting the media and communications center. This was the moment that was caught live on television. Take a look at this. The Israelis claiming that Iran was using that facility and its communication capabilities for military purposes, in addition to seeing the television that you see running there. Tonight, things are a bit more quiet now here in Tel Aviv as people are emerging out of these bomb shelters, but remaining ever vigilant, Chris, waiting for the next move to come whenever it does. Chris.
Robert Sherman, stay safe. Thank you. Okay, the Wall Street Journal now reporting that Iran wants to get back into U.S.-led talks about its nuclear program. Those are talks the Islamic State abruptly abandoned after the first wave of Israeli attacks. Tehran's condition for returning to the table, a promise that the United States will not join Israel in the conflict. Here to break this down for us is Simone Leiden, former Deputy Secretary of Defense for the Middle East. She served in multiple administrations under both Republicans and Democrats, so she's a very good one to have with us. Okay, it's hard for me to get a read on what the next move will be from the Trump administration. White House officials telling Middle Eastern allies that U.S. forces would only ever get involved in the event of a direct Iranian attack. But there's no real clarity from the president or his team. What's the scenario that could see direct involvement for the U.S. against Iran?
Well, first of all, I think that it's on purpose that that things are a little bit unclear right now from the U.S. Side. I think President Trump is giving himself some space, strategic space for decision making. Should that happen? I think looking back on the first Trump administration and where President Trump did make decision to conduct offensive military actions really came down to the deaths of U.S. personnel. So we saw, for example, in the first Trump administration when the Iranians and Iranian-backed terrorist groups attacked U.S. civilians or U.S. military in that, at that time it was in Iraq. President Trump would not, he didn't just take that. He turned around and there was a big military operation as in response to that, which ended up taking out Qasem Soleimani, a senior general, the head of the IRGC Quds Force at the time. So he has a history of taking action, but he also says, and he means it, that he doesn't want to go to war, and he tries to take every possible off-ramp. But in the case of this Iranian regime, they did not take any off-ramp that he offered, including 60 days to come to some sort of agreement on this nuclear program.
So I hate to interrupt, but the move by Iran to ask for these talks, this smacks of desperation and isolation to go from rejecting the talks to pleading for them. What does this tell you about how the mullahs in Tehran see their situation?
You're absolutely right. It is utter desperation. They clearly are losing. They're certainly not winning. The Israelis have been conducting these targeted strikes, both from the air and on the ground, as we've seen. Iran has no response to that other than these horrific ballistic missile attacks against Israeli civilian centers, and they haven't really been able to take out strategic Israeli sites. I don't think the way that Israel has in Iran. So yeah, they're desperate and they're reaching out for some sort of twig of help, but Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has made it clear that they're not interested in negotiating right now. Obviously, they're in the pole position and they want to continue their operation until they achieve their stated goals. So President Trump obviously has a long history of making deals in the Middle East. We've seen that over and over. So it will be interesting to see if he wants to get involved in this way again and what he might be able to accomplish. But personally, I'm interested to see, but I also think likely to continue. This Israeli operation is likely to continue.
There's a phrase floating around in Washington these days. We hear it coming out of Israel too, regime change. And that the answer here is that to move ahead for peace, they need regime change in Tehran. I am old enough to remember when regime change was a dirty word in American politics after the Iraq War. How should we think about this? If there's regime change in Tehran, isn't it also possible that what follows the current regime is even worse than what we're dealing with now?
Yes, our policy, obviously, in the United States is not regime change, and never has been. President Trump, in his first term, was not a fan of regime change. There are a lot of people, however, who have come to the conclusion that there is no possible negotiation with this regime, and in fact, it's wildly unpopular. But that's up to the Iranian people as to whether or not, there seem to be some, and I've heard about some Iranian groups that are working to undermine the regime and potentially even working with the Israelis. We will, if that is the case, we'll see more and more of that in the days and weeks to come. I think the fact that Elon Musk has provided Starlink in Iran so people can continue to communicate, even though the regime has taken down the state-run Wi-Fi. Those are all tools that potential separatists and anti-regime activists can use. And, it would make sense if the Israelis were working towards that, because I think that would stop this conflict much faster than anything else, than a prolonged military operation would.
Okay, Simone Ledeen, we thank you so much for making time for us today. Joining us now, you know him. It's Mick Mulvaney. He's the former chief of staff in the first Trump administration, and he also happens to be a NewsNation contributor. Brother Mulvaney, all this talk about regime change and backing Israel in a wider war in the Middle East has America firsters feeling a little nervous these days. Speaking with The Atlantic, President Trump brushed back those critics, saying he was the one who decides what America first means. We hear about tensions inside the Pentagon over how to play all this. Yeah. But I want you to hear what our friend, Mr. George Will, had to say about the anti-interventionists. How seriously should we take the divisions within the administration and within the Republican Party?
That's life. We have divisions. Now, MAGA says we didn't vote for this. Well, the world gets a vote. And the world is being heard from, and the world remains different. And if Tucker Carlson doesn't like it, he can go back to Moscow.
Okay. Talk to us, Mick, about the internal politics of MAGA and at the White House about all this stuff.
Yeah, I think George is right in that to a certain extent this is life. I'm not really sure what vote the world gets. I look forward to chatting about that with George next time I see him. But look, this is going to divide the party. It would be dividing the Democrat Party, by the way, as well, as we saw after the October 7th events of a couple years back. Some of the Democrats wanted to support Israel. Other elements in the Democrat Party did not. Chris, we've got a country of, 350-odd million people. You've only got two major parties. To think they're monolithic on just about anything is sort of hard to imagine. But yes, there's going to be elements within the Republican Party that want to do more, that want to get engaged, that want to be active in Israel. And there's sort of what we call, or I guess we just refer to now as the non-interventionist wing of the party. I do think that wing of the party is ascendant. I think the default setting right now for the Trump administration is, okay, we're not going to get involved. That's where they start. Now, they can move from there, but the starting position is, no, we're not going to get involved. This would be different from, say, the Lindsey Graham wing of the Republican Party, which is, let's bomb everybody first and ask questions second. So there's going to be a variety of opinions about how to handle this. I think everybody would expect that.
And how sensitive is the president to the people like J.D. Vance, George Will referenced Tucker Carlson, those voices? How sensitive is the president to their criticisms versus the criticisms of the traditionalists in the Senate and the people who want a more aggressive posture?
I think he listens to both sides, listens to a bunch of different folks. I think his natural sort of proclivity, if you just ask Donald Trump, where are you basically, is to not get involved overseas. That's his starting position. Doesn't mean he won't do it. It just means that's sort of his natural inclination. He'd rather not see us get involved overseas unless we absolutely have to. Now, you may be having the argument that this is one of the places we absolutely have to. I thought it was interesting that the Iranians reached out and said that, they'd be willing to talk if the Americans agreed not to do anything in Israel. They're not going to get that out of Trump. Keep in mind, Trump loves this concept of strategic ambiguity. You're not going to be able to pin him down on something like that. So he's going to try and wait and see. If American interests are attacked directly, that makes his decision a lot easier to do something. But right now, I think Donald Trump, as so many people are, in a wait-and-see mode as to what comes next.
Mick Mulvaney, we thank you for your time. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Christopher.
Okay, coming up, detain and deport. Trump is expanding his immigration crackdown, but at the same time, he's pausing some of those raids. We'll explain. Plus, shockwaves on Capitol Hill after a targeted shooting leaves one Minnesota lawmaker dead and another one injured. we know about the suspect, and the calls to increase security in our nation's capital. And on this 10-year anniversary of Donald Trump's famous escalator ride, a new calling, if you will, for Trump world. Details when the Hill returns. Welcome back. I'm Chris Stirewalt, filling in for Blake Berman. President Trump directing ICE agents to ramp up deportations in major U.S. cities. He called out Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York by name, saying, quote, "These and other such cities are the core of the Democrat power center, where they use illegal aliens to expand their voter base, cheat in elections, and grow the welfare state, robbing good-paying jobs and benefits from hardworking American citizens." This follows a week of anti-ICE protests in Los Angeles that turned violent at times. The administration deployed the National Guard and the U.S. Marines to the city, a move California leaders are challenging in court. At the end of last week, the Trump administration also announced it would shift away from raids on farms, hotels, and restaurants. NewsNation's own Nancy Liu has been tracking this story hour by hour in Los Angeles, and she joins us now.
Hey there, Chris. We have a break in the major protest action in LA today, but behind me we've got the Marines and a significant military presence that remains as immigration enforcement ramps up even more. Over the weekend, we had a massive operation at a usually popular swap meet in Santa Fe Springs. There was a heavily armed layer of Border Patrol Guard, ICE teams detaining several people during this raid, and a Saturday concert had to be canceled. And that swap meet, it reopened yesterday. It was largely empty. While President Trump has agreed to ease up on enforcement at hotels, restaurants, and farms, his order for thousands of daily arrests in Los Angeles and other blue cities has many undocumented immigrants in hiding. Now, the next legal round of President Trump versus Governor Newsom, that's going to play out tomorrow afternoon when a 3-judge panel hears arguments on whether California's National Guard should remain under federal control. And Chris, of note, that 3-judge panel, 2 of them appointed by President Trump, the 3rd judge appointed by former President Biden. Chris?
Nancy Liu, thanks for all your great work on this story. We'll talk to you again soon. Okay, no issue has been as important to Donald Trump's political success as immigration. Frustration with the first Obama administration and then the Biden administration on border security fueled both of Trump's presidential victories. So how's it going now? Why don't we break it down? So far this year, the number of migrants encountered by agents at the U.S.-Mexico border has dropped significantly. This time last year, monthly border encounters clocked in at roughly 200,000. But in the past few months, they've hovered only around 12,000. That's a pretty substantial difference. Now, economists from 2 different think tanks, one right of center, one left of center, are releasing a new study that will predict the U.S. will actually lose more immigrants than it gains this year. That's a first in 50 years. Compare that to recent history when immigration surged during the Biden administration. Sounds like Donald Trump is delivering on what voters wanted. If that is so, how do we explain this? According to a recent poll from Quinnipiac University, more Americans now disapprove of the president's handling of immigration than approve it. But look at this. Look at where the swing voters are. Now, we're not surprised that Republicans really like it and Democrats really don't, but look at the independents over here. The split there is essentially the same as the overall numbers. And some of that disapproval, and you can see it here in the 9% among Republicans, those are maybe people who want Trump to go even harder. But certainly this number is a warning sign for the administration that mass deportations and heavy-handed tactics have limited popularity. Okay, there, we did it. There's still much more ahead on the Hill. Congressional security in the spotlight after the shooting of 2 Minnesota lawmakers. We'll talk with a member of Congress on why he's asking for action, and a powerful Senate committee has revealed its first changes to the so-called big, beautiful bill. But is everybody on board? I bet not. We'll discuss. And when you're on the go, get the news from Washington as it happens. Download the Hill app for the latest in politics. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Hill on NewsNation. Relief in Minnesota. The two-day manhunt is over after police arrested 57-year-old Vance Belter. Belter is now charged in the shooting of former Minnesota House Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband, along with wounding State Senator John Hoffman and his wife nearby that same morning. Belter reportedly created a hit list of some 45 elected officials. Authorities say Belter disguised himself as a police officer, leaving his SUV behind at Hortman's home. Police also found a stockpile of ammunition inside the car.
Political assassinations are rare. They strike at the very core of our democracy. But the details of Belter's crime are even worse. They are truly chilling. In the early morning hours of June 14th, Belter went to the homes of 4 Minnesota state politicians with the intent to kill them.
Okay, the targeting of public officials also has lawmakers in Washington on edge. Here with the latest on that and more is NewsNation's Washington correspondent, Joe Khalil.
So, Chris, look, here's the situation. Right now, Capitol Police, they are on track to record some 10,000 threats to lawmakers. I've been talking to people all day. House, Senate, Republican, Democrat, they're all feeling this general sense that they worry those threats are not being taken seriously enough. What I've been told is some of these threats that come in, they reference children's names. They reference specific addresses. And some lawmakers have told me that even after they report them, they don't hear back from Capitol Police or Sergeant at Arms, sometimes 3 or 4 days. So the discussions that are now being had, we know House Democrats tomorrow, the full Senate tomorrow, Republicans over the weekend, are about what they can do at home, especially where they don't have a lot of security. Members will walk around with one staff member maybe, to keep themselves safe there, to keep their families safe. Take a listen to Joe Morelli, Democrat from New York, and then on the other side of that, Tim Burchett, Republican from Tennessee.
It is, it's putting a significant, as I said, emotional burden on people. And even when members worry less about themselves, I think what you do worry about is your family.
Let's just call out evil people and mentally ill folks for just that. Forget the politics, forget all the other. They've committed a crime.
Burchett, they're talking about lawmakers that are having arguments over whether the assassin is Republican or Democrat rather than focusing on the issue. He's got a bill to try to enhance security for members, too. So something to watch there, Chris.
We should probably talk to him about that, Joe. Thank you very much. Joining us now, in fact, is Tim Burchett, Republican Congressman of Tennessee, who has put forward that bill that would allow members of Congress to shift their office spending toward more security measures. Congressman, thanks for making time. Tell us about your bill. Is this in response strictly to the Minnesota murders?
Well, no, actually, I started working on it when this nice little Jewish couple was targeted in Washington, as you know. I brought it up last week before the shootings in Minnesota that I was concerned about Jewish members on both sides of the aisle that could possibly be targeted. And I thought it was important that we provide them with some more security as we've done with others in the past. And I get the same, usually get the same answers when I raise questions. It's we're working on it, and then I act like something just ran by me, and that's usually a glacier that runs by Congress because we are very slow to react.
What does your legislation do? What would it do specifically?
It allows us to tap into funds that are available to us to do that, and it clears up some of the bureaucracy involved. That's part of the problem. When you have to get security, does it go through our MRI? Do we pay for it with our campaign, or does it come out of our own pocket? And also, does it cover our family members? And what constitutes official business? If I go to church, that's not official, but everybody knows where I go to church or where I eat at or whatever, and it just provides us with a little security there. And I think the American public understands that.
Okay, you took a lot of heat after the Nashville shooting when you spoke to reporters on the steps of the Capitol, and you said, quote, "It's a horrible, horrible situation, and we're not going to fix it. Criminals are going to be criminals." And you were talking then about gun control and other things that you're going to do. When we think about Congress, right, does the same thing apply here, that we say life is dangerous, bad things happen, emotionally ill people, mentally ill people are going to do bad things, and that's just part of life?
Yeah, well, it is, unfortunately, currently. But as my father told me, who fought in the Pacific, if somebody wants to take you out and doesn't mind losing their life, you better stop them out here, because up here is going to be a lot more dangerous. And I think, you know, we are Congress people. It's all you got to do is Google us. You'll know where we live. You know where we are. You know who we are. You know where we serve. And frankly, it puts us in a different spot. So I think we're in a very precarious situation right now, and I would hope we would address it before something tragic occurs.
So there are lots of calls for increased security, some even more aggressive than yours. Benny Thompson calling for Capitol Police to assist in providing what he calls real solution for increased securities. There are a lot of measures out there for this. I don't know how long the fences were up around the Capitol after January 6th. It felt like months and months and months and months. And we saw the fences go up again, 5 miles of fencing for the military parade that we had here over the weekend. Do you worry about the gap between Congress and the constituents, that if we make Congress perfectly secure, if it were possible to make the Congress perfectly secure, we'd also have a Congress that was perfectly out of touch? Is there a balancing test here between access to 2 and 4 constituents and security for the members?
I think there ought to be discretion on the members' part. If they feel there's a situation or if they get a threat, I think it should be taken serious. You know, there was a claim that there was bombs on my property, and the claims were delivered on a Friday, and I was informed of it on a Monday. That's not acceptable. That is not acceptable. I was crossing the street after a vote on Israel, and an anti-Semitic group hollered at me that they were going to kill my wife and my daughter in my home. A lady did with blue hair. You know, so at what point do we take this stuff serious, and what time do we not? And we're not taking it serious now, because, you know, I was told when we had our group call and conference, I was going to receive a call from the Capitol Police today. And guess what? That was last week, and here it is Monday morning. I still haven't heard from them. So we've got a real gap there that we've got to address, and it needs to happen sooner rather than later.
Okay, I can't let you go without asking you about the budget reconciliation package that we're playing ping pong with between the House and the Senate. Senate's getting ready to pong back your ping. And you voted for the House version with loads of reservations, right? You said, I expect this to come back better. I want this to be deeper cuts, but I want to advance the process. We've seen some of the work coming out of the Senate now. It's not moving in your direction, right? This legislation is not moving in your direction. Do you think you're going to be able to get to yes on what comes back from the Senate?
If it's more deficit spending, then probably not. I think we need to really take that serious. We're $36 trillion in debt. And under the Biden administration, every 100 days, we increase that debt by $1 trillion. Currently, over the next 10 years, I think it'll add $3 trillion under the big, beautiful bill. So in effect, we slowed the rate of growth, but it's still growing. I would hope we can slow it to zero and go the opposite direction at some point. America's got to take this serious, or we're going to become a third world country.
Congressman, we thank you for your time. Have a good evening.
Thank you, brother.
Coming up, is that big, beautiful bill going to pass the Senate? Some changes are underway. We'll take a look. Plus, this.
I think what we wanted to do is really create something where you know what you're getting. You're getting a lot of value for your dollar.
Call me maybe. Donald Trump Jr. sat down with NewsNation as the Trump Organization dials into the mobile phone business. The full panel is coming up next.
Bill O'Reilly on Cuomo.
What are you talking about? Here's what I'm talking about, Cuomo.
America's favorite sparring duo with TV's liveliest, most honest debate.
I just tell you the truth backed up by facts.
Wednesday at 8, 7 Central, only on NewsNation.
Welcome back to The Hill. Just moments ago, President Trump saying everyone should immediately evacuate from Tehran, Iran, writing on his Truth Social just minutes ago. Iran should have signed the deal I told them to sign. What a shame and what a waste of human life. Simply stated, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. I said it over and over again. Everyone should immediately evacuate Tehran. just hours ago, after much anticipation, the Senate Finance Committee released its version of President Trump's tax plan. That's the heart of the big, beautiful bill. One major point of contention, cuts to Medicaid, leaving previous comments like these from notable Republicans looking a little dicey.
My bottom line is I'm not going to vote for any Medicaid benefit cuts, and I'm not going to vote for anything that hurts rural hospitals.
So they will be coming off. So people are not, well, we all are going to die.
No cuts to Medicaid.
Thank you, everybody.
No cuts to Medicaid.
The full panel is with us now. T.W. Origi is a former communications aide to Senator Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Granger is a NewsNation contributor. Julia Manchester, national political reporter for The Hill. And Niall Stanage, White House columnist for The Hill. Guys, thanks for being with us on yet another slow news day here in Washington, D.C. I think we'd better address what the president's saying about Iran. Niall, I want you to unpack this for me. He's not saying the United States is going to join Israel in these attacks, but he certainly is greenlighting what the Israelis are doing, right?
He is, yeah. I think the significance here is that any distance that perhaps existed between the Trump administration and Israel has really been closed down. That's a difference from just a few days ago when, in the immediate aftermath of the Israeli attacks, Chris, as you know, Secretary of State Marco Rubio was talking about how Israel had launched a unilateral strike against Iran, creating that distance. That distance has now been removed, I would say.
Julia, the anxieties inside the Republican Party. We'll ask about Lindsey Graham particularly here in a moment, but the American Firsters are getting a little anxious, right? The folks who are anti-interventionists are getting nervous inside the Republican Party. This is a pretty bellicose talk from Donald Trump. We talked to Mick Mulvaney about it. Is this a more hostile, more warlike Donald Trump than we saw in the first term?
Yeah, absolutely. Like Niall said, this is a complete 180 from what we saw just a few days ago with Donald Trump, really trying to put some daylight between him and Benjamin Netanyahu, really amid the hopes that there could be some sort of an Iran nuclear deal. But I think the developments over the weekend, the counter strikes we've been seeing, is just changing the situation.
Okay, TW, what is this a good day? Is your old boss Lindsey Graham saying, okay, we're succeeding, we've got the United States going deeper on this move against Iran? Is that what you see here?
I think Israel gave a great gift to the world by taking away Iran's ability to create a nuclear weapon and point it at Israel and at the rest of the world. Look, this was a long time coming. And if we know anything about Donald Trump in foreign affairs, it's don't try to call his bluff. Mm-hmm. Vladimir Putin learned that the hard way during the first administration when Donald Trump took out 500 Russian-aligned fighters in Syria. This is another version of that. He gave them 60 days. On day 61, Israel made a move.
I think in this, they were about to have their 6 rounds of talks, and I think that even though that might be long to some, it still was worth talking. It's supposed to happen yesterday, and to make a move from Israel on Thursday, caused tension when you got to think about the civilians involved. So I don't think Americans overwhelmingly want to get involved in this. I don't think Israeli people overwhelmingly want to get involved in this. Neither do I think that Iranian people want to get involved with this. And to make a nuclear weapon, even with the uranium that Iran has, it's important to know that it would take up to a year minimum. And so it's not like they're going to put together some nuclear weapon and start attacking immediately. It would be something that if the United States needed to get involved, they could get involved in the process where it was necessary, as opposed to right now.
What makes this timing very unique is the capabilities of Iran have been decimated so heavily. Their proxies have been taken out. Israel had taken out a lot of their air defenses. We were in a uniquely strong position to make the move now. And the people of Iran have been suffering under this tyrannical regime for a long time. They are not as supportive of the Ayatollah as anybody else is. I'm not calling for regime change. I don't know if anybody is, but the problem is that the people
are calling for regime change.
Sure, some people say bring back the Shah. Like,
right.
There's a
Benjamin
lot of
Netanyahu seems to think that it would be a good time for a new government.
And it looks like Donald Trump said no to taking out the Ayatollah.
Okay. We have to talk about the budget. We've been talking about the big, beautiful bill for so long that the BBB is going to be, I'm going to have to get a tattoo. But Julia, feels like the Senate's going to pass something that the House won't pass. We were talking to Tim Burchett. They're going to make these changes, and they're just going to keep playing ping pong. They've been playing ping pong back and forth. They're not going to do the part where they actually go together and go into a committee and they fix the bill and pass one thing and do it. They're just going to keep waiting for the other one to get the blame. Is that what happens?
Absolutely. And I think one of the examples we've seen today of what came out of that Senate committee, the tax committee, was the SALT deduction cap. It is drastically lower than what it was in the House. 40,000 in the House, 10,000.
Those are the
in
tax
the
exemptions
yeah.
for state and local taxes, and Republicans in the Senate don't care about it because there are no high tax states represented by Republicans. So they're like, get rid of your SALT tax.
Right. And you already have Nicole Maliotakis, a number of New York Republicans coming out against this. So, you could see this could potentially be a placeholder. We'll have to see. But I think another important part of what we saw come out today is the cuts to Medicaid.
Yep.
And a lot of moderate Republicans, even some conservative Republicans like Josh Hawley, have pushed back on potential cuts to Medicaid. I mean, obviously, we've seen Democrats make this into a political weapon against Republicans, especially ahead of the midterms. But for rural Republicans, I think there certainly is risk if you're someone like Joni Ernst, for example, who is running for re-election in Iowa with Medicaid.
Don't you know it? Okay, coming up, Donald Trump Jr. sat down with our friend NewsNation's own Connell McShane. What he's revealing about his new business venture into mobile phones. And Elizabeth Vargas reports is next. She's going to be joined by former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett. And President Trump will step out shortly for the group picture at the G7 up in Canada. That's all coming up at 7 p.m. Eastern, right here on NewsNation. It was 10 years ago today that Donald Trump came down the escalator at Trump Tower and changed American politics, to be sure. On the anniversary of that day, the Trump organization made a different announcement. They are launching Trump Mobile, a new mobile phone business. And today, Donald Trump Jr., who made that official announcement, joined our friend, NewsNation's Connell McShane.
With so many of the things that we did and have done over the last few years have really been out of necessity, right? We started Truth Social, not because we wanted to start a social media platform. It wasn't really something I ever had on my bingo card. But when we were cut off, when we were, censored, when we were, abandoned by all the usual suspects, we had to actually get involved in that game.
Trump Mobile is slated to launch in September. The phone costs $499, and the plan is, get this, $45.47 a month. $45.47. Okay, panel. The Truth Social now didn't work, right? The president may be able to one day sell it to. I bet he'd like it if Elon Musk or somebody bought it. But Truth Social wasn't a big winner. Wasn't a big success. The idea of these phones sounds like it's a regular phone and they're piggybacking on another company's service. It's just a branding package that you can have the gold phone and you can do this. Is this an ethical quandary area for them, or is this just more? How do we see this?
I'm not sure that they do quandaries, really, Chris. I mean, they seem pretty clear that whether it's Trump sneakers or Trump steak back in the day, or now Trump phones, that it's something that they're willing to do. The one that concerned me most actually was the meme coin thing, because that just seemed an open invitation to anyone, anywhere, to effectively buy influence with the President of the United States.
And we had foreign nationals coming in, buying time to get access to the president. On this question, coming back over to this side of the table, Donald Trump Jr. is positioning himself for a presidential run. He says he feels called, he feels a calling, but he is leading the charge on this. He's got a social club with a very expensive buy-in in Washington, D.C. that he's launched. TW, what's the Trump Jr. vibe around the Republican Party? Is he a rival to J.D. Vance, or what do you see in that?
When looking forward to the presidential election, there's going to be a ton
of
There's going to be a ton of names. I don't think anybody sees him as the heir apparent. Some might, but I think there's going to be a big battle. The president has been very keen to keep himself away from that. He even said, well, it could be Rubio, it could be JD, who knows? If Donald Trump Jr. wants to run, he's going to have to make the case. He's not like his dad in a lot of ways. And Donald Trump is a force of nature. He'd be hard to top that.
You get the last word. You're going to get a Trump phone?
Well, I mean, with Palantir and everything else, doesn't this feel like a little bit too much? A little bit like Trump's hands are on way too much. And it's giving me Trump University vibes. That was a business that
There's
failed
a nice
miserably.
callback to 10 years ago. That's a very nice
That's
callback.
one failed business. But yeah, I don't know. This one rings
Oh,
uncomfortable.
you know what? You've ruined the show with that. You finally wrecked the whole show, and there's nothing else.
We gotta go.
Panel, thanks guys very much for being with us. I really appreciate you. And by the way, we thank you at home for watching The Hill on NewsNation. Would you please remember to download the Hill app for the latest news and politics? And by the way, panel, before we go, the last thing that we should say is that with Elizabeth Vargas up later tonight, she's going to have Donald Trump coming out at the G7, and he's going to be there, and he'll probably create some weird disruption when he does the photo op, and we get to see all of that, which is going to be more wild content. More wild content.
Slow news day tomorrow, too.
Slow news day tomorrow. Another slow day news tomorrow. But we'll be back at 6 Eastern tomorrow. It'll be good. We'll be here. And Elizabeth Vargas Reports starts right now.